Out with the old, in with the new, just in time for 2024 and CES about to hit, Dell has a brand new lineup of XPS laptops here, and I got to see them for myself firsthand. This is going to be interesting. This is Luke with Digital Trends. Happy New Year, everyone. It's 2024, and it's time to let that CES hype start to build. And hopefully this one, on all the new changes coming to XPS, is gonna do the trick. So you know the drill, like this video if you would, and subscribe to get our huge wave of CES content coming your way. We'll be covering TVs, laptops, gaming monitors, and a lot more, so you don't wanna miss it. But for now, let's talk about these XPS laptops and why they are such a major change this year. First things first, Dell has just 3 laptops in its XPS lineup now. The XPS 13, the XPS 14, and the XPS 16. There are 4 models that are gone entirely from the lineup: the XPS 13 Plus, the XPS 13 2-in-1, the XPS 15, and XPS 17. All gone. And that might sound like a lot less models now, but it's not quite as drastic as it might sound. The new XPS 13, for example, shares a lot in common with last year's XPS 13 Plus. And while last year's base XPS 13 is out. So that one's really just a name change with some other small tweaks. The XPS 14 and 16 seem like a direct replacement of the 15 and 17 from last year, but these ones aren't quite a one-to-one swap. See, Dell is one of the last companies to change to 14-inch and 16-inch sizes, now matching what Apple, Lenovo, Asus, and pretty much everybody else already has. And the benefit here is obvious: smaller laptops with just as much performance in theory. But there's more to this refresh than just a size change. This time around, the radical design and tech changes in last year's XPS 13 Plus have been rolled out across the entire lineup. So the XPS 14 and 16 both have that invisible haptic feedback trackpad that some people love and some people have a hard time with. Either way, it is beautiful here. That means the grippy carbon fiber palm rests have been traded out with a more standard aluminum, still coming in the 2 color options, granite and platinum. More controversially though, these new laptops also don't have a physical function row of keys, instead replacing them with those glowing capacitive touch keys featured on last year's XPS 13 Plus. This time around, you can change the brightness of them, at least, so they don't completely blind you in the dark, but they still function in the exact same way. Now, personally, I don't mind the touch buttons, but I do think they present a problem on these bigger models, which are definitely more oriented towards a pro audience who actually use those function keys a lot more than the average person. I can imagine a developer or programmer, for example, being quite frustrated with this keyboard in the same way that they were with the touch bar on the old MacBook Pros. Another person I can't imagine being happy about the changes here would be a photographer or videographer. Dell made the wise decision to keep around the audio jack on the 14-inch and 16-inch models. Still not there on the XPS 13. But it's here, so don't worry. But on the side, next to those 3 Thunderbolt ports, you'll see that the full-size SD card slot has been replaced with a micro SD card slot. So if your workflow involves loading lots of files directly from a camera, that's likely going to be a very frustrating change, and you already don't have HDMI or USB-A on board, so one less dongle goes a long way. It's a shame because it wasn't so long ago that Dell just added the SD card slot to the XPS 15 and 17, which I applauded them for at the time. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not all bad. There's a lot to like in this redesign. I especially like the edge-to-edge keyboard here, how it looks and how the spacing of those extra large keycaps feel under my fingers. This is the keyboard directly from the XPS 13 Plus, and I still really like it. It's one of my favorite keyboards to type on. The seamless haptic trackpad really does still look futuristic even today, and the XPS 14 and 16 are more compact than last year's models, obviously due to the smaller screens. Beyond that, the cameras have been upgraded to 1080p across the board while also keeping bezels small, and importantly, performance should still be solid. The XPS 14 offers the new Intel Core Ultra 7 chips alongside an RTX 4050, while the XPS 16 goes up to a Core Ultra 9 with an RTX 4070 on the graphics. Those feel like solid comparisons to something like the MacBook Pro in performance, though putting something as powerful as the M3 Max in a 14-inch chassis is still something that Windows laptops don't have the efficiency to accomplish. One other big upgrade this year for the XPS is the option for higher refresh panels. Specifically, the XPS 14 has a 3200 by 2000 resolution OLED option, which is a touch panel, and it has a 120 Hz refresh rate. The XPS 16 has a full 4K OLED screen, though the refresh rate here is only at 90 Hz. Still though, big upgrade over 60 Hz. Both panels seem like really good options, and I'm just happy that Dell is offering some higher refresh rates, especially for those that might want to game on the side with these devices. I think I'd still like to have seen mini LED offered as an option because of that HDR performance. I think to compete with a MacBook Pro or some of the other options out there, I'd really like to see the brightness increased, and that's something that OLED laptops just can't produce right now. In fact, the cheaper IPS display options claim to be brighter at 500 nits in SDR, while the OLED panels max out at 400 nits. Lastly, Dell has always been good about offering a wide variety of configurations, and here you'll be able to scale the XPS 14 and 16 all the way up to 64 gigabytes of RAM and 8 terabytes of storage if you really want it. But let's get back to the XPS 13 for a moment, because even though it might be the laptop that's changed the least out of the three, it might have the biggest impact on buying decisions in the long run. So this XPS 13, like I said, looks identical to the XPS 13 Plus of last year. The only differences I can see at this point is the change to Intel's new Core Ultra processors, of course, and some slight tweaks to the display options, with the QHD IPS panel option now going up to 120 Hz. Again, that's great, though the OLED panel is still stuck at 60 Hz. My point though is that the new XPS 13 and XPS 13 Plus from last year are basically the same laptop on the outside. But in doing this, they have cut out the actual XPS 13 from the lineup, which served as a much cheaper entry point into this whole line. It wasn't as flashy or powerful of a laptop when it came out last year, but I thought it was actually a really solid MacBook Air competitor for less money. There were even some really innovative engineering changes internally to get the thickness down and to make it comparatively small and compact. But from the looks of it, this cheaper and more compact XPS 13 has been cut out of the lineup entirely, meaning buying an XPS in 2024 now starts at $1,300, which gets you 8 gigabytes of RAM, a 512 gigabyte SSD, and a Core Ultra 5 processor. Maybe Dell has plans to release something cheaper later in the year as some kind of iteration on last year's XPS 13 design, but the company seems pretty confident in this new design with these 3 new laptops all embracing it. I'm definitely impressed by the boldness, don't get me wrong, but what do you think? I mean, did they go too far with this? How are these going to stack up to competitors like the MacBook Pro in 2024? I won't make up my mind until I get them in for testing, of course, and we'll know more when these launch sometime in the first quarter of 2024. So here's where you chime in. Now that you've seen these new laptops, drop me a comment below and let me know what you think of all the changes. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for a ton of CES coverage coming in the next week.